we're with Vanessa Beeley, is my great guest today from Damascus, of all places. And listen, Vanessa, thanks firstly for coming on the show. Thanks for being you. I've seen you all over the place for all these years, and I've often thought, who is this person out there, you know, doing all these amazing things, diving under cars from bombs and stuff? It's like, and people say, oh, there's nothing you can do about it, you know. And there's you over there doing so much work and work here. So thanks for coming on the show. I mean, you can introduce yourself if you want, but just you do still work with 21st Century Wire, right? You're an editor there with Patrick Henry.
I'm not an editor there anymore. I tend now to work with Mint Press News a little bit more than with Patrick, and UK Column, of course. Last American Vagabond, RT, good old Russian media.
Yeah. I've been on there ranting away.
Russian state media. Yeah, they take my op-eds.
Yeah.
And everything's published at my Patreon account if anybody feels like donating as little as $1 a month for my work.
So go to your Patreon account, just Vanessa Beeley Patreon.
Vanessa Beeley Patreon, yeah.
Well, I'll put a link to that under here as well, with my Patreon account as well. So you also write for the Wall Will Fall. I was looking at your piece on there earlier on about COVID-19 back to school. The new normal is to traumatize children. And we were talking just before we came on, Vanessa. Thanks for doing your work. Honestly, it's very inspiring. And we will talk about AstraZeneca, obviously, and all the rest of it. Oh, here's the Daily Mail thing yesterday. Not that I read it, I just buy it as a comic. There it is. I'm just wondering, on your screen, Vanessa, can you see me or you or what can you see?
I can see you. I can't
just
see
the full screen. Okay, so obviously,
and I can see I can see what you're holding up.
So there we are. That's on there yesterday, and a business secretary, the Sharma lady, who announced a new multi-million-pound deal with the pharmaceutical giants at last. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, but the vaccine hasn't proved to work yet. But we don't have to start with that. We can talk about the shenanigans of AstraZeneca later. I've been saying to people, we talked earlier about empowering people. I think that's what you do best, to think for themselves, you know. And I think that's where we are, isn't it, as humanity now? Is can we take our power back quick enough before it's completely diminished and we're totally enchained and enslaved, where we won't even be able to speak like this on the show, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're rapidly going that way. I mean, just if we think about, the uptick in censorship, particularly over the COVID-19 narratives, we're having videos removed from YouTube if they don't concur with the World Health Organization diktat, as I call it. Posts removed from Facebook, threats of being, put on the naughty step, as I call it. The sort of the global censorship and tyranny, as I say, that we're heading towards global health tyranny and fascism, where we are deprived of our self-determination from a health perspective. I'm somebody, I had cancer. I chose not to have chemotherapy. Wow. And if we're going back 6 years, and I was largely shunned by the oncologists who were dealing with me at that point. I became uninteresting. Now, why did I become uninteresting? Is because they didn't get their 130,000 euros for me being registered as a chemotherapy patient. I found that out, after the event. But at that point, 6 years ago, we still had full self-determination. We had full democracy over our decisions about our health. Okay, we would be pressured, we would be possibly, fed degrees of fear factor and so on. But now we're hurtling towards what can only be described as a single source tyrannical health dictatorship, where we will not be given a choice. I mean, I recently put up a video on Twitter. Alan Dershowitz, who of course was the special plea deal lawyer for Epstein, basically saying you do not have a right to not be vaccinated, and the state will have a right to plunge the needle in your arm if you refuse the vaccination. So, these talking heads, and people can dismiss them as whatever they are, as insane people, but we're ruled by insane people. you know, the people who have effectively funded some of the most heinous terrorist gangs in the Middle East, in Syria, for the last 10 years, and who condone and endorse the atrocities and the satanic atrocities that they're carrying out against the Syrian people for those 10 years, all communities of the Syrian people. Those are the psychopaths that we have in power. The terrorists are only an extension of their power. The terrorists are only a reflection of the evil that exists among them, right? And you know, what we're seeing now with COVID-19, as I said to you before we started, the hybrid war strategy that they've deployed against countries like Syria, Libya, Iraq, Venezuela, Yemen, Iran, etc., are now being turned on their own nations, right? And on the people of those nations. I'm not going to use their people because we talked about that, but on the people of their nations. So we're seeing now exactly the same tactics being used against us, to divide us, to gaslight us, to put the fear of whatever into us. That if we don't accept their strategy, if we don't accept their orders, their command, then not only will we be harming ourselves, that's minor to the fact that we will be literally murdering other people. I mean, that kind of terminology, we've seen it used, right? Both by those that are policing these draconian policies and in the media and by people on social media, you know, who are too afraid to actually investigate what's really going on here. And I understand that fear. I understand it. It's like, as we were talking just before we came on, you know, I'm an ordinary person. I'm an ordinary person who looked at what was going on, particularly in the Middle East, because I do have history through my family in the Middle East, and decided that when you see this level of injustice, you cannot turn away from it. You have to do whatever is in your power to raise awareness about it. I will never claim to be able to change anything, but if I can change myself, if I can change my own awareness, if I can change my own and believe in my ability to do something about it, my hope is that many, many other people understand that they also have that same capability. I'm nothing special. I'm really not. I'm just one human being that just kind of went, hang on, there's something not right here. I need to look into it. And then, you know, the sense of injustice, the sense of outrage grew to a point where you have to express it. And, you know, I think it's really important for everyone to understand that what's going on now, we're in a kind of abuser victim paradigm. The state is the abuser, the people are the victim, and that has been the paradigm that we've lived in for decades, as long as I can remember. And we have to be able to break out of that paradigm, to understand what is happening to us, and to open our minds to the fact that governments who can effectively commit genocide against people in other countries, against people in Syria, people in Libya, Iraq, etc., are not going to care about the dispensable, what I call the little people in their own countries. And I think that's the first myth that we have to kind of blow apart, as hard as it is for some people to let go of that security blanket.
Yeah, amazing.
Sorry, that was a bit of a rant.
No, you rant away, because if you don't, I'll be ranting away and say, shut up, Jason, let the blooming guest speak. And I just then delete and say, no, you shut up. Yeah. But no. So that you can get your own back on the threads sometimes by just saying, well, I can just delete them. But no, it's fantastic, Vanessa. Thank you. That's what we're here to do, to rant. And it is a conversation, just to say to people, it's not just an interview. I hate interviews like, oh, Miss Beeley, what do you think? It's like, stop it. So it's fantastic. Victim abuse are lovely. And it reminded me, when you said that, about when I was writing my book, which I'll show everyone later on. I remember looking outside my house one day, Vanessa, and I saw a street light in the night, and there was all these flies hurling themselves towards the light into the spider's web, which was cast over. I thought, my God, those flies have got to get to that light. They have to, and the spider's put his web there. I used it in the context of the student loan trap. I know it's off topic, but when you said, when you said victim abuser, that is where we are. So, and I said, the light is the job, the success, the money, the pension, and the students, the young people have to get to that light. And the government know that, so they give them a student loan, the student loan trap. But I said the spider's less devious and unscrupulous than the government, because at least when it catches you, it enswathes you and eats you in 2 weeks. The government, like you said about the victim abuser, they actually catch us when we're young, in our jobs, in our housing, or this and they abuse us for life. And people don't see this. So at last, with this lockdown and with this situation we're all in at Vanessa, people have had time to reflect and actually really study the system in their lives, and they know something's wrong. Like you said, you always felt something was wrong. So did I. I always felt it was like, something's wrong. Work, people say, oh, come on, Jason. They don't even pay. They don't even give you a free funeral. My God, you imagine that. If that's not a system of slavery, I don't know what is. So yeah, well said for that. And victim abuser, I call it a sadistic, masochistic symbiosis. So we're allowing ourselves to be abused, and they're abusing us. It's like this thing. And Dr. Sherry Tenpenny I had on the other day, and we were talking about this. A lovely, lovely lady, very brave woman. And someone was ranting at me on the thread saying, yes, Jason, but talk about solutions. And I'd already said on the show, the solution is this. No! That's the bloody solution. No! If enough people say no and step into their power with, for instance, the vaccinations, or for instance with Syria and Iraq, that killed me when I was seeing those people, If people had just said, there was people demonstrating, but if everyone had said, we're not going to work from tomorrow until you dare say you're going to bomb that guy who you lied, said you had weapons of mass destruction. How dare you? How many people has he killed compared to you lot over the years? Syria, Assad, he's so terrible. It's disgraceful, everybody, disgraceful. So stop being bloody brainwashed by all this and step back into your power before it's too late. Because I don't know, Vanessa, I feel we've got a small window of opportunity now, a portal. And if we don't say no now and the vaccines and the microchips come, we're done for.
And I think you're absolutely right about the small window of opportunity. Look, and please don't everyone scream conspiracy theorist at me, but let's have a look at the Bill Gates element here. He, first of all,
let me show that,
pandemic.
Vanessa. I'll just show that's your brilliant piece in UK column. Warren, amazing.
Yeah, that's part two. That's part two of the series about the big pharma behind the UK government lockdown. But if we, if we go back to 2017, when Anthony Fauci was already predicting a pandemic during Trump's administration, and we know that Fauci is closely connected with Bill Gates. He heads up the Vaccine Decade project of Gates. But Gates has already told us this is pandemic 1. Pandemic 2 is coming, or he's mentioned pandemic 2, and he's also mentioned a bioterror attack. Now, I think James Corbett is one of the best at sort of saying to us, look, they tell you what they're going to do. It's just that most people kind of hear it and go, no, they're never going to do that. But look, these are the guys that engineered false flag after false flag. From 9/11 onwards, we had the war on terror, which is the war of terror, as John Pilger tells us absolutely correctly. Terror in this world has grown exponentially since the war on terror began. That's a very simple fact, and that's what I'm trying to say, is that the thing is, they are so clever at behavioral insight. They're so clever at nudging public perception. They're so clever at telling us, no, this is a humanitarian disaster, and if you step out of line, you're responsible for the deaths that are being caused by this pandemic, this war, this terror construct, etc., etc. It's like, let's look at the white helmets in Syria. As soon as I started to question the white helmets, who were established as this first response unit, this humanitarian organization made up of volunteers just wishing to save all of humanity, when you step your, when you dip your toe into that, the screeching that came back of like, oh, how can you say that? They're rescuing babies. Look, they're rescuing children. They're pulling children out from under the rubble. Now, however many years later, 4 years, 5 years later, I'm pretty much vindicated. They falsified events in Douma in March 2018 when I was actually in Damascus. They potentially murdered the children that were used in that falsification. They have been proven to be working with the likes of Jaish al-Islam and Al-Qaeda and every other, barbaric, savage, extremist sectarian group inside Syria. It's proven. Just because Western media isn't accepting it and they're still towing the party line, it doesn't mean that we're not vindicated, those who have questioned this construct. So what I'm saying is that nothing is cast in stone. Everything should be investigated, everything should be questioned, and everything should be doubted. Because it's your health, it's your life, it's your welfare, and it's your future that is at stake here.
Yeah. I'm just busy having a coughing fit. I don't even smoke. There's no, it's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah, quick coughing fit, but it's not COVID,
I was just about to say,
the police knocking on the door. He coughed on his show. Let's get him,
Let's get him out of the house.
I saw him sweating. He's got the bottle. But, on the second great thing you did, go to UK Column, everybody, and read this. But I loved just the first couple of lines you quoted. To achieve world government, it is necessary to remove from the minds of men their individualism, loyalty to family, tradition, national patriotism, and religious dogma. Dr. George Brock Chisholm, who served as the first Director General on the World Health Organization from 48 to 53. So it's never been any different, And this is what fascinates me, Vanessa, now, is that for thousands and thousands of years, it's never been any different. In fact, it was worse then, because if I was speaking like I am now, or you were speaking like you are now, hundreds of years ago, when there wasn't the spotlight of truth on everything, we would have been gone years ago. We would have had our heads chopped off, and people say, oh, but yeah, well, of course, or disappear. People say, but the Queen, it's catching. So you've caught COVID. It's like the Queen. It's like we'll go outside, Buckingham Palace. It's just unbelievable. I look at people when I drive past there, and I want to get out and say, what are you all doing? Is Stockholm? You're waving a flag at someone abusing you. What?
I know. Well, yeah, no. That's the absolute classic, wasn't it? Prince Philip, who said pre-2000 that if he died, he wanted to come back as a virus. Yeah. I can't remember which interview it was and when it was, but he definitely said it. And cull part of the population, and you just think, look, eugenics has been part of the policy of hegemons from the very beginning, right? Why would it be any different now? If we look at, for example, let's go back to Syria again. Let's look at what I call the harvest of war. Now, the harvest of war, people will argue, yeah, but they want the oil, they want the resources, etc. Yes, that's an element of it. But one of the most shocking and horrifying harvests of war is human trafficking. It's child trafficking, it's organ trafficking, right? Now that trafficking goes into different streams. This is something that, I've investigated, particularly with Whitney Webb, whose work on DARPA and all of the Dark Winter program and this. I thoroughly recommend to everybody to go and read Whitney Webb at Last American Vagabond and Mint Press News. She's outstanding in her investigative journalism. But if we look at, as I said, the harvest from wars, if we go back even to Vietnam and you look at Operation Baby Lift, if you look at the photographs of all the Vietnamese babies being brought out of Vietnam for adoption by American couples, illegally brought out, by the way, and this has happened in every single theater where the US coalition or the coalition of imperialism or whatever you want to call them, have operated, where they've attacked a prey nation. One of the biggest harvests are children, and those go into various streams. You can imagine those go into the Epstein type streams, they go into the pedophilia streams, they go into the organ trafficking streams. This, I can't tell you, I'm speaking about it in a very dispassionate way, but when you touch upon the darkness of what is being organized under the cover of these so-called humanitarian wars, it is absolutely horrifying. When you speak to, as I have done, civilians who have seen their children taken away and returned with their organs missing in Aleppo, in eastern Ghouta, these are extremely well-run operations, and believe you me, our governments are funding aspects of those operations. Not only our governments, our legal entities, our legal institutions, our policing institutions, our military institutions, all of them are involved to some degree or another. Just check out child trafficking, organ trafficking. It's one of the most lucrative markets, the red market. And what people need to understand, I don't know how I've diverted onto this, but what people need to understand is the red market, as it's called, does not only involve, as people might imagine, organs. It includes hair, eyes, bone marrow. Everything is recyclable from that body that is stolen, effectively stolen, by those mafia outfits that are running this, the traffickers. And the white helmets stand accused of trafficking. So there again, you have the British government effectively financing an organization that stands accused by Syrian civilians that are ignored, of course, by the British government, of organ trafficking, child trafficking, human trafficking, and all sorts of other barbaric acts carried out against Syrian civilians. But that entire body of evidence and testimony is completely ignored, of course, because it doesn't meet the required narrative, and it doesn't protect the construct, the concept of this first response unit infiltrated into a prey nation in order to give humanitarian cover for the terrorist groups that are also being financed, aided and abetted and armed and equipped by our government and the other governments that form part of the US coalition. So what I'm trying to say here is governments who can directly or indirectly be involved in such heinous crimes against humanity, not to mention the supply of bombs and cluster bombs to the Saudi coalition to massacre the Yemeni people and to enforce a humanitarian blockade against 27 million Yemenis. A government that is capable of doing all of that is equally capable of doing it to people that it considers dispensable or not needed within its own society. You know, it would be very, very naive to think that can be done in another country but can't be done here. Let's look at France, right? For more than a year, the Macron totalitarian state has been effectively gassing, torturing, detaining, beating, shooting, maiming, mutilating French citizens at the Gilets jaunes, at the Yellow Vest protests. And I went on 3 of those protests, and I can safely say to you that, you know, I've been here in Syria since 2016 on and off, and now I've been living here for 6 months. I never faced such a terrifying display of lobotomized violence as I did in Paris during one of the Yellow Vest marches. And that is what we're facing. You know, it's the dehumanization of the little people. The little people become nothing. I remember saying to a policeman who was facing me off at that point when they were trying to push everybody back into Place de la République after gassing them, I said to him, there's children, there's old people, there's tourists there. And he just went, peu importe, who cares? This is what you're facing. It's a complete programming that's gone on in security forces in each one of these countries, so that the people that are effectively trying to resist or trying to defend their rights or trying to defend their self-determination will be dehumanized in the same way that our governments have dehumanized Syrians, they've dehumanized Yemenis, they've dehumanized Palestinians, Libyans, Iraqis. It's what they do. It's what they do when they want to get rid of you, when they want to repurpose policy. That's what they do. They dehumanize, they discredit, they destroy whatever they want to get rid of in order to form whatever new world order or new normal that they're working towards. And what we need to do is to determine what that new world order is, determine the victims that will be, if you like, pushed off the edge because they don't compute with that new world order, and that includes all of the dissidents and people that are, you know, challenging and confronting the narratives. Of course, will be discredited, will be called conspiracy theorists, will be called murderers, will be told that, you know, we're responsible for the deaths in probably pandemic 2, which we predict will come around September time if we don't have a bioterror act before then. You know, this isn't going to stop. This is only part 1. And I would really, this is another thing, I would love to be wrong about this.
Me too.
Nothing would give me greater pleasure than to be wrong. It's not about being right or wrong. It's about reporting what I see. It's about me doing my research and presenting that research for people to make up their own minds. They can disagree with me. That's fine. You know, I'm absolutely happy to be disagreed with and to have a civilized debate. But if you start calling me a conspiracy theorist, or when our entire life is a conspiracy, you know.
It's amazing, Vanessa. You know, I just often at the beginning of shows, I said the same thing to Dr. Sherry Tenpenny the other day. I said, look, Sherry, I know you're here to do your job on the planet. I know it's who you are. So you're doing it, and maybe you're enjoying all the rest of it. And you're here to play a role to help administer the smelling salts, if you like. But I say to them, I'm really sorry that you've still got to talk about this. And I'll say the same thing to you. I know it's who you are and why your job. I'm really sorry you've got to still talk about this stuff. And there's people just still not listening, right? So I'm the same. I would love my family to be able to say to me, ha, we knew you were a lunatic. I'd be the first one to say, thank God for that, you know? Thank God.
I think...
you know, hooray, I was wrong. Actually, they're really good people. But you know, Vanessa, I was just thinking as you were talking that, just when they said to everyone stay at home, now people had attacked me for saying this, Jason, you're going out. I got a lovely tan, look at me. It's not fake, it's like I've been down the beach, swimming, jumping in the river. I've never been out more, it's wonderful, out my motorbike. I'm not staying in. You dare tell me to stay in. He said, stay in. And they even got the yellow stripes around the boxes when Chris Whitty and that Matt Hancock are stood there. Stay in, and Boris Johnson, stay in, be good girls and boys. It's like, you serious? You're telling everyone to stay in? Are we all staying? 7 million people, 7 billion people. You know, that's the first thing. So that shows how much influence they've got, just to say, guess what? There's a terrible big pandemic. You know, obviously we know.
But this is amazing because Chris Whitty is saying that. At the same time, he's put out a public statement basically saying that COVID-19 is not that bad. He didn't even call it a pandemic. He called it an epidemic. I mean, I've posted this time and time and time again, and I think people must have seen the video by now, where he basically says, you know, most people will only get very mild symptoms. Very few people will need severe treatment for it, and most people will survive.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. So on what basis do we now have a lockdown?
Yeah.
And you know, if we go back to the whole modelling to Neil Ferguson and his 100% failure record on mathematically modelling, you know, virus projections of mortality, he's failed 100. I mean, dismally failed. Not even sort of close.
Not only failed, he's a mass murderer because of it.
Yeah, because because actually, you know, what we should be doing is flipping this "you murderer" thing back around on people and saying, well, hold on, you know, how many children are now in poverty? 1.6 million benefit claims in the UK alone, 50% of the world's workforce potentially losing their livelihood. And that's we're only what, May, right? And they're talking about this continuing for 18 months. I mean, the effect, and let's look at the elderly, let's look at the over 70-year-olds, right, that are dying, and that's probably the biggest percentage of deaths from COVID-19.
India,
are the elderly abandoned in care homes and forced to sign DNRs, do not resuscitate, not basically given medical treatment. All the cancer patients that have been told that their treatment is being delayed because of the rush of COVID-19, and yet then we see many times empty hospitals. We see the Nightingale ward set up, beautifully named, of course, set up to receive not the elderly, not the most vulnerable to COVID-19, but the young and healthy. And surprise, surprise, I think there was one report, only 19 beds taken. It's like, come on, people. You know, and the sheer number of epidemiologists who are coming out and saying, you know, this is insanity. And even they are talking about, there was a brilliant interview, oh God, I've completely forgotten his name, Wolfgang Wodarg, I think.
Oh, yeah,
recently.
Wodarg. Yep.
It's a fantastic interview. And I mean, he even went into depth about the fact, look, when he was a parliamentarian, how the big pharma companies were signing secret deals with government. You know, this is the thing, and that's what I've focused on in both my articles. And I do recommend people to read them, because I think they'll be surprised to what extent the British government is actually indirectly and directly invested in big pharma, and in particular in vaccines. Across the board, within the medical advisory board to the government, which includes Chris Whitty, Patrick Vallance, of course, Neil Ferguson previously, Dominic Cummings, Matt Hancock, all of them have a vested interest in the promotion of global immunization, both financially and politically. And that is something that should be raising alarm bells. That should be telling us there is an agenda behind this, right? And if we come back to the, again, I personally, I have the sovereign right to be against vaccinations. I would never have a vaccination. I'm also equally dodgy about antibiotics.
You don't even vaccinate your dog?
No, I don't. No, I don't. And horses, when I had horses, I didn't vaccinate them. Cats, never vaccinated them. I've never had one sick in my life, not even here in the midst of a war and sanctions, and you know, a country which most of the people, and that's another amazing thing. Can anyone explain to me why Syria, that's gone through 10 years of war, economic terrorism, sanctions, most people are living in what I would call immune suppressant conditions. In other words, they're struggling with poverty, they're struggling to eat healthily. During the winter, I told you, my electricity goes off at 8:30 until 10:30 every day. Now we're on a 4 hours on, 2 hours off, right? But in the winter, sometimes it was 2 hours on and 4 hours off, and for some people only 1 hour a day in the more rural areas. And yet here we've had a total of 50 official cases, 3 deaths, right? And that's with porous borders. The American troops are still coming in. They're still moving from Iraq into Syria, from Turkey. The Turkish troops are still coming in. You know, COVID-19 apparently doesn't exist for American military maneuvers. Under the cover of COVID-19, it's reoccupied territory inside Syria, right? It's burning agricultural crops in Hasaka in the northeast. Turkey is clandestinely continuing to invade Syria under cover of COVID-19. Israel is bombing Syria under cover of COVID-19, and it's very blatant about it. It sees COVID-19 as an opportunity to destroy Hezbollah and Iranian positions inside Syria. It's actually publicly announced that. So again, I need to say to people, think about what COVID-19 is doing. Think about how our governments are claiming that they're taking care of us. But at the same time, while this is a global pandemic, why are they doubling down on the maximum pressure measures against countries, against peoples like Syria, like Iran, like Venezuela, right, Iraq, Libya, etc.? Aren't they supposed to be humanitarian? Aren't they supposed to be waging this war to save the people of Syria? And yet here they are abandoning them, basically, to what they are describing as a global pandemic. I would disagree with that, of course, but that's how they're describing it. So let's go along with their description right now. And at the same time, they're increasing the funding to the terrorist groups in Idlib under cover of COVID-19. Oh, just in case there's an outbreak. There's no outbreak yet in Idlib, by the way, according to official sources. But just in case there is, let's put some more money into Idlib, which is basically controlled and dominated by Al-Qaeda. Let's give them some more money because no one's going to notice we're doing it now. America is reoccupying, as I said, it's moving troops back into Syria. It's going back to bases that it previously evacuated. Turkey is bringing more military vehicles, more troops into Idlib. So at the moment, we've got like a three-pronged action against Syria going on, and no one's taking any notice. Nobody's taking the blindest bit of notice because everyone's thinking about COVID-19. And the government itself, the British government, I mean, I urge people also to watch UK Column News. I mean, they are doing an outstanding job at the moment. But if you look at, I think it was on May the 11th, the programme where they showed the leaked documents from SAGE, which is the Scientific Advisory Group for Emergencies for the government. And on that, it was perfectly clear that this was a psychological war against the British people, waged by the government, where the media was being instructed to instill fear into a population because that will make them more malleable to the government policies. We're being played. We're being played. And this entire COVID-19 narrative is being used to double down the pressure on prey nations like Syria. The British government, the US coalition, had lost the military war in Syria, right? They'd lost it, despite a 2.8 billion investment by the British government into regime change in Syria. They'd lost the military war. So now what happens? COVID-19 comes in. Right? It's brilliant. COVID-19, it's yeah, I mean, this is part of, you know, it's the war against China. If you watch John Pilger's The Coming War Against China, it's the same thing. This is an economic hybrid strategy war being waged against the entire axis of resistance, right? And Syria is pivotal to that because geographically, Syria is the hub of the trading wheel from China to Russia to Iran to Israel, of course, whose security must forever be protected.
The chosen one.
Europe,
the chosen,
Turkey, yeah.
You're being anti-Semitic. You be careful, woman. You be careful. Yeah, go on.
You know, so that's the thing. Once you start to unravel it, and as Whitney Webb, I think, said in an interview quite recently, she said it's all the same players. It's all the same tactics. It's all the same strategy, whether it's you know, whether it's a hybrid war, whether it's a proxy war, whether it's a psychological war, whether it's applied behavioral science being used against its own people, whether it's behavioral insights, it's the same tactics, it's the same players. You know, when you look at the multi-layers of all the Gates organizations, which are all kind of invested into by members or by agencies of the British government, let's say, both clandestinely and a little bit more overtly. But if you go to the UK Aid website and you type in Bill Gates, check out all of the collaborations that UK Aid has had with Bill Gates on global immunization. It's extraordinary. So,
Yeah.
you know, we have to follow the money. We have to see what is the driver here, right? It's not the welfare of the British people. It isn't. Because if they cared about that, they wouldn't privatize the NHS. They wouldn't cut back on emergency services so nobody could get to Grenfell Tower. They wouldn't gentrify areas, right? They don't care about those people.
They don't care, Vanessa. Well said, Vanessa. It's wonderful to have you on the show because you know the truth has got a perfume to it, right? And that's when you know it's the truth. People say, "Well, I can't smell it." Well, that's because you haven't done your homework and you haven't looked at this. And this is one of the things I was going to say when you were speaking. It's like it's a very bitter pill to swallow. I've said it for years. I'm sick of hearing myself say it. A bitter pill for most people to swallow to actually admit that they've been tricked and fooled. Now, it's not like you've been tricked and fooled. You've been so busy in your jobs to survive with this sword of Damocles above your head and in such terror that you've got to pay your bills. I don't blame anyone for not looking into this. No. But just a quick thing, Vanessa. I have people coming into my studio a lot and in my gallery as well. And we talk about things and they'll say, yeah, it's dreadful, the government, this, but then there's a cut-off point. It's like about the children or the abuse of children or the organ harvest and so, or the satanic abuse of children. I can't. Real people who are on it, you know. I can't face that. I'll say you can't face it. That's a step too far for me. And you know what? That's why it's going on. I say to them because you not be able to face it gives them absolute carte blanche to do what they want. In other words, it's so evil and horrifying. Most people can't face it, which gives them carte blanche. They can do what they want, and people can't face it. And I'm just saying. I remember years ago when General Wesley Clark, you remember the iconic, thing he did with Democracy Now. I've played that 1,000 times. Listen, everyone, look what he says. And they came up to me after 9 and said, we're going to take over 5 countries, 7 countries, and so on, whatever. And people say, well, what? Oh, yes, Syria, this, that. He said it, and it's been going on, the thing, and they'd never do that. That's what people say to me, Vanessa. They'd never do that. Why? Because we've become pathetic little orphans and they become our mummy and we become our mummies and daddies. And it's like, they'd never do that to us. They promised to do the best thing for us when I voted for Labour or Conservative or back to Labour, back to Conservative, back to... It's like, look, everybody, it's time to bloody grow up and stop being children.
Yeah, sorry. And I think what's really important.
Oh, one more thing. Sorry.
Yeah, no, go on.
This is the. I wanted to put this cherry on the top of one of my little rants because guess what? And I think you alluded to it earlier on. If you don't, you're complicit in the deaths of those children. It's like, oh, don't tell me I'm complicit. I've got nothing to do with it. By you turning a blind eye and looking away and giving it carte blanche, you are complicit in those children's organs being harvested and them being raped and their blood being drunk or whatever you want to say. You're complicit. Sorry, Vanessa.
No, I mean, I think what's really important is to get out of this left-right paradigm because again, that's another construct that is used against us, of course, because as soon as I mean, I can't even remember all the various labels I've been given, from a sadist to Kremlin agent to Russian support to, I mean, it's just ridiculous. And then right wing, and then they couldn't make their minds up. Was I communist? Was I right wing? Was I neo-fascist? It's just. But, we need to get away from this because what it is effectively is a form of self-censorship because you end up kind of saying, oh, I'm not going to go on that platform because I'll be accused of being right-wing. No, look, your voice should be heard anywhere. And unless somebody's calling for a lynching of somebody, then they should be heard. To be honest, the so-called right-wing has been one of the most sensible over imperialism, over interventionism, and over Syria and all the other countries that have effectively been raped and pillaged by the US coalition, by the imperialist nations. And nobody should be kind of discredited or sidelined or marginalized because of some guilt by association. The label that they will use to try and discredit someone. Of course, anti-Semitism is high up there, but then you get the fact, oh, well, you know, they're right wing. They're this. Forget the labeling. Look at the facts. Get away from this left right, because the left is useless. The anti-war left is freaking useless. What have they done? What have they done? They fell apart over Syria. They went down the whole R2P route, you know, the responsibility to protect doctrine, which is basically just carte blanche for the imperialist nations to go, oh, great, we've got permission now. We'll just go in, send our proxy forces in to destabilize this country, put in a regime of our choosing, which will be complicit with our demands and our needs for your resources. That's what it is. It's the humanitarian fig leaf fell off a long time ago, but the anti-war or the anti-war left have no idea what happened. And now, of course, they are the ones defending the COVID-19 official narrative. I mean, it's extraordinary. I don't know what happened to sort of the informed voices on the left. So I think the whole left-right thing needs to be dismantled. Yeah. I think now we're about humanity. We're not about left or right or a Republican or Democrat. They're all the same.
Do you know what someone said? What was it? They're different wings on the same bird, someone said to me.
Yeah, they are.
But you know what? It's always felt, not always when I was a little boy, but it's always felt so weird to me. Someone says the left and the right and this and that. It's like up and middle, and it's like I've always thought, what the bloody hell are they talking about? And it's like I was in the car with Patrick Henningsen once. We went to Cyprus to interview people outside, you know. And I was asking him. I was saying, Patrick, because I mean, what a brilliant mind, you know. Don't get big-headed, though, Pat. Yeah. So he's like, well, he's trying to explain things to me. It was like, for me, it was like, it just all seems completely mad. Yeah, it's like left, right. I'm this, I'm that, I'm you, I'm up, yeah, I'm in the middle. It's like, look, everybody, there's truth and there's lies, and it's just like, I do think the smelling salts is under human noses now, and it was well before this COVID thing. And whether it was let off purposely or whether it was an accident, my God, they're capitalizing on it so much. But humanity was awakening at a tremendous pace like we've never seen before. And there's only one thing to do, and that's choke them off as quick as possible. I want to say it before I forget. I want to say thanks to Ian Crane. Man, I wanted to say it and I forgot at the beginning. My apologies, Ian. Yeah, Ian Crane, my God, you know, he's been talking about, and what a mind that man's got. We've had him speak at conferences here, and he's been around the house here, and I've been sat with him, you know, eating pizza and just listening to him and thinking, who is this guy? How does he memorize all these things? It's unbelievable. All these facts and figures, and with me, I've done a lot of drugs, so I've probably got very few brain cells left, you know. But there's some amazing people out there doing some amazing things, and we've got to drop those things now and stop squalling. But here we are. There's no doubt. You know, we're at a point now in humanity where we've got to say, hang on a minute, what's the facts? I mean, with Syria, Vanessa, I know we haven't got a lot of time left, but it's amazing with you with Syria, because I saw him hang Saddam, and I saw Colin Powell with his little thing, and then, you know, and I was in amazement. The depleted uranium I was going on about, that was another thing, you know, those weapons of mass destruction. God, it was dreadful. And and then Syria, and then this, and it's like, but it's still going on. They're just carrying on the same narrative. The evil Assad. And I was thinking, who is this guy Assad? How evil is this guy? I mean, what you've spoken to Assad, haven't you? You've sat with him and spoken to him. What does he's very intelligent. I've listened to him speaking on interviews. It's like, compare him to an idiot George Bush or an idiot Blair or an idiot Boris Johnson. I mean, this guy's a highly intellectual being. I'm not saying he's never done anything wrong, but how does he talk to people like yourself about the West? He's got to say they're psychopath madmen who just need to be really locked up. They need to be quarantined, these people. And another thing, I know we're running out, but I want to ask you about Trump, because everyone's saying, oh, Trump this, he's you know, I'm sure, I hope he's a really great guy, Trump, and he's rounding them all up, and he's gonna this and he's gonna that, and then Boris is also like Trump, and you know, the white hats, we're all waiting for them. They're going to save us. I say, look, we've got to save ourselves, guys. Don't wait. Yes. You know, stop it now. Stop being children again. Someone's going to come and help us. No, you're going to help you. You're the white hat. But how do you feel about Trump and this whole thing around Trump and Fauci and stuff? What do you think about Trump? I got to ask you, because you see things, you know.
I mean, I think all it is actually is a sort of conflict of interest on a capitalist front. You know, he probably sees, well, hang on a minute, Bill Gates has got his fingers in every single pie, and God damn it, now vaccines are going to be, as Gates described them, potentially powerful investment market, investment sector. You know, Gates saw this decades ago. And of course, a quick aside there, because we also need to know that the Tony Blair Institute is coming to the rescue of all of this. Of course, having destroyed the Middle East, Tony Blair is now stepping in as global pandemic interventionist for COVID-19 advice.
My God, if I ever see Tony Blair, I can put this out right now so people know I said it. I will grab that guy and I will wrestle him to the floor with his hand behind his back. I will. I know I'll get put in the Tower of London. I will. That man's a murderer, a murdering fiend.
But that's what I'm saying. You know, the Gates and Blair partnership goes back decades. You know, they were discussing the computer, the digital age for the NHS back in, I think it was 2009. And of course now, as John Pilger has very clearly said, you know, you have techno whiz kid Matt Hancock partnering up with Babylon AI and all these other organizations, you know, all these AI biometric identification.
He's evil, you can see it in his eyes.
Yeah. You know, so this has been coming for some time. What we need to also remember is these guys, you know, they don't plan for tomorrow. They plan for tomorrow in 20 years' time. And that's something that we also all lose sight of, you know, whether it's the Bush dynasty. I mean, they talk about the Assad dynasty. Well, let's look at the Bush dynasty. Let's look at the Zionist dynasties. Let's look at the, you know, across the board, dynasties and these kind of power institutions exist. And they have been putting this strategy on the drawing board for decades, including the destruction of, as you said, the 7 nations and maybe more, etc. You know, so we also have to look at it in a historical context and bring it forward. I mean, my next article, hopefully for UK column, will be on the Gates investment, the recent investment into Serco, which is a halfway house for asylum seekers in the UK. Now, what does Gates want with a halfway house for asylum seekers? You know, and this whole Tony Blair Gates partnership, and then it's this massive, as you said, this massive spider web, right? This huge matrix of power clusters and connections that interact and revolving door connections, and they're the same across every board that you look at, whether it's COVID-19, whether it's the war against Syria, the economic war against China, against Iran. It's all the same players, from World Bank, World Economic Forum, Davos, Gates, you know, all of them, right? The billionaire industrial complex, basically, that is driving these regime change wars, but it's driving many other things. It's driving big pharma, it's driving the media, it's driving Hollywood, it's driving everything that drip feeds information to us, that subliminally programs our minds to accept what is coming. Look at media, look at film, look at Netflix series. Look at how many have predicted exactly what we're going through right now. Why? Because that's tenderizing. You know, they're pre-programming us to think this is normal, this is okay. Seeing kids in chalk squares in playgrounds because they can't touch each other, that's normal. We're supposed to see that as normal. Kids being potentially taken away from their parents in case they're infected with COVID-19 and taken to some kind of medical detention centres, that's normal. We're supposed to accept that as normal. Right?
That is. That's from the piece you wrote, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that just, when I saw that, it just broke my heart.
My God. It's unbelievable, Vanessa. It really is, you know. You know, we've been nearly speaking an hour now, and I promised you wouldn't go over an hour. So But there's so much to talk about, and it's lovely to have you on speaking.
Oh, it's really nice to be on. Thank you.
Really, Vanessa, honestly, I've admired your work for a long time. I remember you speaking in Frumet with Patrick, I think, and I was supposed to come up there and I didn't make it. And I've really, really admired your honesty and your voice for many, many, many years, you know. And this thing with just to finish off, AstraZeneca, for God's sake, everybody, go and check them out. I'll just read a couple of things off. You know, they lied to doctors and healthcare professionals, blah, blah, blah. $20 million in fines for off-label drug marketing. They had a schizophrenia drug which was only licensed for that, and then they started saying it for other people. The 30 million, blah blah blah. There's huge figures they get being done over and punished for. Listen, everybody, just honestly, we can't carry on just going along with it, and we'll never break free from it until we actually see it. You know, we've got to see what it is first, but it takes a lot of study. Like Vanessa's been studying this stuff for years and years and years. It doesn't come easily, but we all know something's wrong now. We've had a chance to actually stop off the hamster wheel, and people have, my God, I'm a slave. And I think now a lot of people are saying to me, I don't want to go back to normal. Hey, it was never normal. It's a casino global mental asylum. It was never normal. You've been bullshitted that it was normal, and it's not, you know. And so we don't want to go back to normal, but what do we do? Well, first we've got to just see it and feel it, because people do feel it, Vanessa. They feel something's horribly wrong. They might not still have the courage to face it, but it's becoming glaringly obvious now. What's going on. You know, before there was always a slowness between when something was done and when the spotlight of truth from people like yourself was shone on it. Now it's almost instantaneous. Something's done, boom. So there's a race to enslave humanity now, a total race. And like someone said to me, I told you in the beginning, they said, so give us some solutions, Jason. Listen, you're the solution. All you've got to do is say no with enough people, whether it's an extra carriage on the train in the morning so you don't have to stand there burping and farting on people, or whether it's saying no to vaccinations that you don't know anything about. Just say no, everybody, and that's it. It'll render them virtually helpless. But final words from you, Vanessa, to just give people some strength and hope. You already have. Thank you for what you've said. You know? People who feel a bit helpless, like, what can I do? I feel helpless. What do I do? I'm going to go back to my job in 4 weeks' time, and I don't want to go. I want to be a father again, a mother again, a husband again. I've been robbed, and people don't see their children growing up. You know, I've said start new communities. We're actually doing a whole thing about that. Natural Earth Eco Living. We've got .com. We've got a thing that we're trying to bring people together, start new communities, because I believe there's going to be a breakaway civilization when actually the shackles are really going on tight and the vaccines and the microchips. It's like, no. And the people that say no will have to start new communities, because otherwise you won't be able to get food unless you have the vaccination and the microchip. You won't be able to do any banking. So we're going to be forced to make that decision. What are we going to do? Are we going to break away and start something different? What are we going to do? So final words for people before you go, Vanessa.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I think the first step is educating yourself. And as soon as you feel confident in your self-education, start educating other people. You know, start introducing them to the same information, to the same sources. Find sources you trust, and then follow them. You know, question them. Don't be afraid not to question them, because all of us are human beings. You know, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to get things wrong, but not deliberately, unlike mainstream media. And then I think, you know, we have to accept that, as you said, and I think that's an incredibly important point, none of us should be waiting for some non-governmental organization or for some governmental organization to put our life to rights. We are the ones that are going to make the change that we need. Only us. We are the only ones that can do it. And we've basically had our belief in our responsibility and our judgment and our rationale stripped from us by this whole gaslighting strategy which has been going on, which has basically taken all that self-empowerment away from us and replaced it with their alternative reality. And I think until we wake up to that, we can't get out of that victim-abuser relationship, but we can get out of it as soon as we start to inform ourselves. That is, I can't sort of overestimate the importance of information, the importance of variation in the information. You know, get as many opinions as you can. You don't have to agree with them, but just get as many as you can and take the truth out of them and form your own opinion, and then it's yours.
Yeah, well said, Vanessa. And where can people find you again? Where's the best place if someone wants to contact you or something like that, you know?
Best thing is probably either on Twitter, Vanessa Beeley on Twitter, or on my Patreon, or on my email address. I can give that to you and you can put it out.
Okay, fantastic, Vanessa. And there's my book. Please go and get that, The Emergency Transformation of Human Beings. I wrote that 8 years ago. It's very timely now, I got to say. It was 8 years too early. It's exactly what's happening now, you know. And so thanks so much, Vanessa. Obviously, please subscribe to this channel as well. Stay there 1 second, Vanessa. I just want to ask you something before when I've signed off. And listen, thanks for everyone for having the courage to you know, see the truths that come out of people like Vanessa's mouth. And they have got a perfume to them. It's amazing. Thank you, Vanessa, for everything you're doing. Honestly, it's amazing. Thank you to UK Column and 21st Century Wire, Ian Crane, all these people, David Icke, who's being whacked off everywhere now. So thanks to all those great people who were the torch bearers for people coming from behind. So thanks, Vanessa, and thanks for everyone for joining us today. Thanks very much. Bye bye. That's all right, Vanessa. So I'll. Hello, it's me again. I hope you enjoyed our show today with our wonderful guest. We're very lucky to have so many wonderful guests on my show. I just wanted to promote C60, ESS60. We have Chris Butters and Patty Greer, who come on the show once a month now. I just wanted to promote it because it's an amazing stuff. They call it the miracle molecule. And it's 170 times more antioxidant than vitamin C. I take vitamin C as well myself. But it's quite incredible, really, the studies that have been done on this. And don't believe me, do your own homework. That's what I always say. But I'm promoting this because I take it. There it is. It's C60. This bottle's got the extra virgin organic olive oil running down it. So that one, the label's gone a bit funny on that one. But yeah, I feel really good taking this stuff. And like I said, if you go back a few shows, you'll see Chris and Patty from SES Research talking about it. C60evo.com is the website to look at. And you will get a 5% discount. That's why I'm promoting it, you know, because I really do believe in it. And I work with Chris to do that. And the code is JL1SPEC. That's all capitals with a number 1, JL1SPEC. You'll see it underneath this show. And I feel great, you know, honestly, I really do. And it's a massive anti-cancer. There's no doubt about it. You can't say it cures cancer because there's that old cancer law that says you can't cure cancer from anything else other than radiotherapy and chemotherapy. That's a 1930-something law, obviously, to keep the drug companies rich. But no, there's so many benefits. People are reporting better sleep, you know, as cancer prevention. It's really, really, really good. And I feel really good since I've been taking it. And I just wanted to promote it. That's what I'm here to do. So, and also another big thing is at the moment with the big paranoia about COVID-19 and coronavirus, you really do need all the help you can get. That's why I do take zinc as well, a high dose zinc now, which is good for viruses. And obviously B12 I take in a liquid form. I use Solgar. They're a great company for that. And as I say, take vitamin C, rosehip syrup, and other things. Your health is everything, you know. I can run faster than a lot of 30-year-old guys. I'm nearly 60 now. I can sprint for ages. I can run. I can cycle. And I think it's a huge a culmination of different things that you do. I have my green smoothies every morning. Your health is so important for you. And don't overlook that with your body. Don't neglect your body. So go to c60evo.com and look at my other shows, as I said, with Chris, and see what we speak about on there. Chris is on once a month with Patty, and I really believe in this stuff. So go and have a look, and I hope you feel better. Even people's pets are feeling better. People's pets who have had arthritis are feeling so much better. I've had problems with my hips, with my one hip, and my hip definitely feels better, and I can run faster than I ever could run before, I think. And I'm not saying this all about C60, but I'm generally keeping fit anyway. But I think we need all the help we can get. So that's it. That's my rant about C60. Go and investigate it. It's an incredible substance, you know. It really, really is. It's a very exciting product. And Chris actually sells from SES Research to other people who also sell it on and make their own ESS 60. So this stuff's special, and I really believe in it. So have a look at it. And thanks for supporting my show, and thanks for watching my show. We've got some great guests coming up. I'm starting my new art classes soon, which I'm looking forward to. That'll be nice. It's really good for health and happiness and peace of mind to sketch and paint. So keep an eye on that. That's coming up soon. And see you on the next show. Bye-bye.